Okay, so we're going to use the Whitney Junior punch and make the hole for our attachment screw. After we fit the back into the letter shape, and we have the point at which the attachment screws are to be inserted, and we use a 3/32 bit to drill through the L-shaped clip, and then a 1/2 inch sheet metal screw is attached. Okay, a 1/2 inch number 6 sheet metal screw is used to attach the letter edge shape to the letter back. After the letter has, you've attached the back, the final thing to do is to use the touch-up paint that comes with the coil of metal and touch up your attachment screws and your rivets. Looking at the face, if there are any points that need to be touched up, you can use the brush on the in the touch-up kit and apply your final touch-up paint, and then you have a finished letter. We're now going to build this letter R, and we're going to use the hand measuring system, and so we'll demonstrate all of the techniques and procedures for building this R. I do want to talk about why we demonstrate an R. The letter R has requires many techniques that you'll use every day. And so as an example, there's the outside breaks, an inside or a reverse break. This is an inside roll. This is an inside roll, an outside roll, a reverse break, and an outside roll. And most importantly, how to build an insert for the R or many other letters. So the finished letter will demonstrate that the tab where the two ends of metal meet is going to be at the top, and we have selected this point for the tab. Now, since I am right-handed, when we're measuring by hand, I position the letter in its face-up position, and I start from the left and move to the right in a counterclockwise direction around the entire letter. By contrast, when we measure the insert, we start at the tab point and we measure in a clockwise direction. And then when we lay the measuring tape out on the letter edge, it will be in the correct orientation. By contrast, if you were left-handed, the way that you would measure this very same letter is turn it face down, start at your tab point, and go, essentially you're going the same direction. But because the letter is face down, you're now going in a clockwise direction, and the insert would be in a counterclockwise direction. That's an important point to understand on how to hand measure the letter. We highly recommend, when using letter edge, and you're using the hand measuring system, to use the 040 layout tape. We already talked about how that we have laid the letter out, and what I've done here, and it's visible to see, is that I've marked the location of the tab, and especially is this important when you're beginning because it's easy to get confused where you are working on the strip of letter edge and how it relates to each point on the letter. So what I usually do is leave the mask on the letter, and mark the position numbering with a number, 1, 2, 3. This is a reverse break. Mark the beginning and the ending of the inside roll. This is actually an outside roll from this point to here. This is break number 4, number 5, and this is a sharp angle. That's what that mark means. From here to here is an inside roll. From here to here is an outside roll. A reverse break, that's position number 6. The outside roll beginning here and ending there. The tab, the insert for the tab begins here and going in a clockwise direction. This is a reverse break, position number 7. The beginning and the ending of the inside roll. While I'm talking about that, why is this inside and that's outside? The color of the metal is going to be on the outside of that roll, whereas on the insert, the curve or the radius that you're going to make, the color is going to be on the inside, and that's the difference between an outside and an inside radius. So understanding how the letter and all of its positions relate to each other, the next thing to do is to actually mark the letter, laying it out using the 040 layout tape. So at the tab, I make a mark on the letter, on the layout tape, excuse me, calling that the tab. And once I have that single line, then I position it at the point where the tab would be on the Plex letter. Now you'll notice at this point that the mark is just slightly outside, beyond the edge of that stroke. And the reason is that tab is going to roll over on top of the letter. So there has to be an allowance. This is the only allowance you have to make, is on outside breaks we allow a little extra material where the outside break is going to occur. So having positioned the mark that we made for the tab, we're going to walk the layout tape down the stroke of the letter and make the mark for outside break number 1. And I transfer this notation that I've made on the surface of the Plex letter to my layout tape. That way I always know this position is here, it's not at any of these other points, and it decreases the possibility of making mistakes. So having this point marked, we start again on the outside of this stroke, positioning the layout tape, walk it down to the end of that stroke, and mark it on the outside of the end of that stroke. This is position number 2. Now for this stroke, we start on the outside slightly, the thickness of the butyrate, and we walk it down carefully, and where the reverse break occurs, we're going to, instead of being on the outside, we want to stop short, mark that short of the actual cutout on the Plex letter. Because remember, there's going to be a thickness of metal that's going to come from this direction, so we stop short of that corner point, and then that will allow for a proper fit. Now we transfer the mark again. This is a reverse break, and this is position number 3. Starting again, we're going to measure from here down to this point. We position this mark that we have made slightly short of that corner, the cutout corner, and walk the layout tape carefully down and transfer all of those indications that we made on the face to the layout tape. If you feel that the tape has moved on you, it's easy to go back to the last point that you started with and reposition it. So we've marked the end of that roll, and then this is the beginning of this slight outside roll, and then the position number 4, which is also the end of that outside roll, position number 4. Starting slightly on the outside of that stroke, since it's an outside corner, marking position number 5, slightly on the outside. Now this is a sharp angle, and so at this point I make an indication like this that tells me this is a sharp angle. And this is important because when this material is filed and bent, the thickness of hem needs to be removed more on this one side so that this can fold closer. If we don't indicate that this is a sharp angle, we will not, unfortunately, file out enough of the hem, and it will have a tendency to break out. So on these sharp angles, indicate that by using a sharp carrot, that you need to take out more of the hem. And you'll see that as we begin to file the metal. This point is also the beginning of this slight inside roll. So I mark my layout tape with the indication that that is the beginning of this slight inside roll, and this is the end of this slight inside. This is the outside roll, and then the reverse break. and we again measure just slightly short of that actual cutout point. This is a reverse break. It's the end of this outside roll. This also is position number 6, and it is the beginning of this outside roll. So position the reverse break indication mark on the layout tape, and then walk the layout tape around the surface, the perimeter of the letter until you come to the end of that outside roll. Tell myself which direction we're going. And this mark at the end of the letter is made right on the stroke line, and that's a cut line, which X indicates. Now to measure the insert, we start again. This is I call it a reverse break point, even though the tab is going to be attached to this part of the letter edge, and it's going to fold in. But at this point, I use the reverse break marking, and then I add a little extra material that will actually show on the face when we're finished with the letter. And so I start this stroke, the insert, with the reverse break and a little extra material, and then position that point on the letter. And remember, we're going in a clockwise direction on the insert. This is position number 7. This is the beginning of the inside roll of this insert. And the end. And then at this point, we measure short of the actual letter cutout. This is a reverse break. Add some extra material, and then the tab is going to be attached to this end of the letter, and that's our cut line. At this point, we're ready to transfer those measurements to the letter edge. So we've finished laying out the measurements for our R that we're going to be building, and the next step in the procedure is to actually use the layout tape and lay out those measurements on the letter edge. I do want to make one procedural note, is anytime you're building a letter that has a center or an insert, you want to measure the entire letter first, the perimeter and the center measurements. But we need to build the center before we build the outside perimeter. And the reason for that is when we're inserting the center into the letter, we need to be able to manipulate the letter. And that's impossible if it's already been pegged down with the exterior. The other point is that center, you need to have access with a drill and pop riveter to be able to secure the tab joint. And so that's only possible if we build the center first. So keep that in mind for any letter that has a center that you're building. So we'll pull our material through the leveler, and we'll carefully transfer the measurements from the letter edge, from the layout tape to the letter edge. Many beginners find it helpful to secure the layout tape at one end with the clamp while they're transferring the measurements to the letter edge. So that's what you'll see visualized here. So carefully and as accurately as possible, transfer the measurements that and all of the notations that you've made on your layout tape to the letter edge.